happening.
Yeah, we could always play with it later.
Yeah.
So Claire, why don't you just kind of like get us all calmed down and kind of, centered and use that time as you do to so that other folks can arrive.
Sure. I'm thinking, one second. Da, 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 da. What is this? Ooh, what is this? Da, 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 da.
Nice.
I'm just going to play a little bit for a second because I can.
Do you have to adjust your sound when you do that so it comes
Well,
through?
you know what would be good, actually, good question, is if you mute and then I'll put on original sound and that way we won't get feedback. So I'll just play for a minute. And I invite you to just perhaps take a moment and go into your hearts.
Thank you, Claire.
You're welcome.
So Roxy's joined us and she has a few minutes. And so if you could, introduce the group to GRC. Roxy has also noticed that it's might just be the load of us. We can expect other folks from the GRC.
It is, yeah.
But it's a great opportunity. This will be recorded and shared as well.
So this is, well, yeah, so go ahead, Roxy.
I was just going to say, Claire, I just wanted to start by thanking you also for reaching back out once we got connected. Whenever we got connected by David, my cat was in the process of almost dying. And so luckily she's alive, but I went through like a multi-week, very, very intense animal situation, and I'm still digging myself out of how far behind I am from all the communications. But it's definitely been at the top of my list to lovingly reach out to your community and reconnect, because I'm deeply passionate about the work that you all are doing. And David Hodgson and I actually connected right at the beginning of the GRC, and I kind of helped a little bit early on with Becca. And Samantha Sapaio was a big part of the Design Science Studio last year as well. So yeah, we're just honored to be invited, and happy to share a little bit about what we've been up to. And I'm really excited to learn more about the GRC Arts and how we can be better partners and collaborators.
Well, that's so exciting, you know, because there's GRC Arts, and then I recently took over running it. And the kind of the dome that it sits inside of is actually called dynamic emergence. And dynamic emergence is a cosmology that embeds us inside the planet, embeds us inside the cosmos, and gives us a way of considering all the different ways of knowing and being that exist that need equal representation in order for the diversity to really express itself in our evolutionary process. So I'll be excited to share that too. Mark's actually just started going through all of that content in a new cohort, which you're all welcome to join, by the way. So yes, thank you for bringing us up to date, Roxy, in the way that you just did. And I kind of want to give today to Mark in a way, because I feel like, Mark, you kind of have a vision for today. And GRC Arts is that it's a whole, it's, you know, it's a garden of variety, you know, because you've got people dealing with finance, with design, with arts. What else do we have? Self-care, you know, all sorts of stuff. And I think one of the things that I'm noticing about GRC Arts is a desire for more cross-pollination between the areas of focus, to see how, especially, of course, how the arts can support perhaps outreach, you know, for different focuses. So I'm here in two capacities, really. The GRC Arts, but also dynamic emergence. So Mark, where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, well, since we have Roxy for a short while here to begin with, what I'm doing is setting up the context. It was wonderful yesterday during our sessions, and we had a breakout where we were asked to summarize all the different mentor sessions that we've had. And of course, I got chosen to write something about backcasting, and Tony Patrick, who brought that notion of world building to us. So what I'd like to do is start with that short statement of what that was, which kind of sets the context of why we're here, which is beaming regen era rising. And so after I share that, I would like Roxy could share her sense of intention of founding the Design Science Studio and what 2030 looks like for her, and how did we get there? All right, so let me first read this to you. So we had a session about world building with Sir Tony Patrick. To create a world that works for 100% of life takes imagination. This is called world building, which we see in science fiction and many protopian scenarios. This is an exercise in anticipatory design science, as Bucky Fuller would say, in order to understand if we'll be creating more problems by our efforts. In order to discover the journey of how we arrived at such a beautiful future, it's called backcasting, which maps out the steps taken to be successful. Contrary to forecasting, which relies on a past trajectory, backcasting looks towards the world building that the future is willing forward. Beaming was born out of these exercises with Tony Patrick during the inaugural Design Science Decade launch of Regen Era Rising. The backcasting evolutionary alliance mediums, beaming Regen Era from the heart of the Regenaissance. Roxy?
Thank you, Mark. I am delighted to hear the synergy that you were spontaneously paired into that group, and that was the synthesis that you got to do. Thank you for the invitation to share about my sense of intention in founding the studio and kind of what 2030 looks like for me. Time-wise, I have about 8 minutes, so I'll do my best to be concise. So my sense of intention founding the studio was very much that this has been kind of a peak moment of evolution of my creative path. I have my whole life been an artist and an academic, very academically minded, just very curious about the world, and an activist, raised by my mother, who's an artist in the studio, who would go into the mountains in Colombia to teach the indigenous to read and write, to protect their lands. And so that activism kind of spread across deep care of all life, of all beings. And as an artist and a bridge builder, I recognized that the more I got to do the work in the world around kind of sustainability and regeneration, both from a cultural and planetary perspective, I was often finding that the artists and designers, which were critical change makers and visionaries, were not resourced and supported, and the privilege of being able to kind of be deep inside of the some of the, the great equalizer of education was, it also takes time to study and then be a vector to help be a translational force across many different learning types and paths and peoples, and this was kind of emerging in our conversation yesterday. And so I felt really deeply passionate about, after almost now 15 years, but at that point 13 years of doing this work and having my personal mission, which is to harness the power of art and experience to catalyze social and systemic change, to merge disciplines and help people learn together through transdisciplinary collaborations for the regeneration of our culture and our planet. And that has been my life mission for now 15 years. And so how that has shifted over time, and how that led me to creating the Design Science Studio as one of the co-founders, Amanda Joy Ravenhill, who's the previous executive director of BFI, she and I had been doing different creative interventions for some time, and I came to her with this idea, and I said, how might we create a space that's an incubator, an educational support mechanism, and then a place to showcase the work of creatives that bridges the gap between cross-sector collaboration, and then also helps to amplify and change culture for artists and designers across the regenerative movement, because it is critically important to help use some of the power of speculative design and imagining past what we think is possible into what we help to move towards a potential that artists and designers and creatives have always been doing from the sands of time, and how incredibly important narrative and story is to that process. And so she said, oh, regenerative transition, why don't we use the Design Science Decade? And so we thought, let's revitalize the Design Science Decade, which essentially supports this regenerative transition by saying we have made all the right tools for all the wrong reasons, but we can turn the ship around. We have more than enough resources and frameworks, and there is we're entering this period of what Amanda now calls optionism. So we have very few options left, but we have them. And so we get to choose those options. And by future casting where we're going and then back casting the steps to get there, we can help to move towards those visions of a realized future where all life thrives at the expense of none, that's equitable and just and regenerative. And so my sense of what 2030 looks like for me and for the Design Science Studio, as one of the founding members, but also just a part of this community and who is constantly learning, is that we have brought some of the vision of the world of Regenera, and we're living it, we're seeing it, and what we're about to experience in Regenera Rising, which is the summit that we are about to celebrate our second annual. It's connected to the Story World, which was also born of these world building sessions, which is a city that docks periodically throughout the decade and lets us experience what's possible of this, fully embodied representation of all life thriving at the expense of none, and everything from all of our different kinds of systems, kind of from ecological to governance, are working in tandem and working together and we're, shifting our dependencies on fossil fuels, and we're, really being able to fully be driven by living systems and permaculture principles, and we're regenerating on every level internally as community and for the planet. And so the city that docks periodically throughout the decade, by my vision for what 2030 looks like, is that we're living a lot of that in the world, and we've shifted dramatically, and we have this experience of the regenaissance, this regenerative renaissance, the power of artists and designers and creatives around the world has been seen and valued, and we're shifting our value to incentivizing social good and the good of all life over profit. And the resources are the way that we are resourcing. It's not this extractive process, but one that we're reconnecting to the source of Gaia as part and parcel of a larger body. And so we're all able to focus the incredibly important creative life force energy in collaboration over competition. And in 2030, we're living that around the world, and we have a new sense of what equity really means, and we're empowering and centering previously marginalized voices, which include the voices of the earth. And the part of the beauty of what I think we've created in the studio is a reminder and making a stand to say, and I think this is what GRC Arts is doing and many other creative consortiums around the world that we're excited to dock together with, or as the Vision Chain would say, link train cars, is that we're saying it's important to create these incubation spaces, these sacred containers where the creativity that needs to have the bound space to come forward and be nourished, to bring forward those that radical imagination of where and what we could and how we could be living, and help bring that forward in all people. And every human has a unique seed to bring to this world, and everyone is unique and diverse for a reason, and diversity breeds resilience. And so I imagine this really spreading and changing culture around the world, and us really getting to kind of live. I love this imaginal mycelium of the future. I will stop there.
Of the now, of the now, of the now, of the now.
Yeah, and we're living it now. And we're living it now. So going from 2030 to now is where we're going to get to experience much of this for the 11-day summit that is approaching. We get to see the stories of this happening now, and we get to amplify those, because there's a lot of really difficult, very real things happening in the world that are not an embodiment of this potential. And there's a lot of good news, and there's a lot of beauty that's happening. And so being able to create space to share that good news, and also to embody some of these principles and invite people into the process of creating now forward is so much of what we get to celebrate, as we're also launching and amplifying the visions and work of so many creators, and also amplifying the work of so many collaborators around the world who are also a part of this movement. And so this is another kind of embodiment of the collaboration over competition. The summit invites like a collective creative energy forward, not just from the studio, but also from broader communities to come forward and share and be a part of it, and have their stories and creative works and cross-sector collaboration also amplified. So yeah.
The energy, Roxy, the energy when you speak, I just feel all the beaming. It's so exciting. And I just need to share this. I hope you have enough time to hear this before you have to pop off today, at least. I definitely want to stay in touch, obviously. But the thing that keeps popping in as you were speaking is that a while ago, I drafted, with help as a collaborative living project, living document, The Rights of Nature, looking at the other countries and other counties around the world that have already done this, to put into the US Constitution. So it was drafted with the help of and participation of people like Polly Higgins or CELDEF and civil rights communities and organizations, as well as environmental ones. So I'm going to actually put that on the Dynamic Emergence Mighty Network, the link to that and the content, because I sort of feel like somehow I want that to be a presence in people's minds in terms of visioning what's possible. You know, and then the backcasting that comes from that, because that I don't know why, but that just feels like it was something I wanted to share right now.
Thank you, Claire. Are you Australian?
No.
Where are you from?
I haven't been asked
England?
that for a long time. I'm from England, but
You're
I
from
live,
England. Okay.
I live in Northern California.
Oh, amazing. We're neighbors.
Oh, really?
I'm in Northern California.
Oh,
Me
right.
too.
Excellent. Well,
Where
then
are
we
you?
shall meet. I'm in the East Bay in Richmond.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, we're not far. I just moved from Oakland over to West Marin and I'm about to move to Novato. So
Nice.
so the rights of nature, one of the artists who was in the studio last year was the person who was the segue for me to really get deep in the rights of nature. I ask about Australia, and forgive me, I used to have an Australian boyfriend. I have lots of English friends and I still mix them up. I'm like, you know,
Well, it's okay.
imperfect
I'll
in my
live.
hearing. But not everyone really knows about the movement to, the reason I mention Australia is because they've successfully like granted rights to mountains and, like waterways and there's so much, I think, beautiful, good news about the rights of nature actually being granted the way that corporations have, human rights. And I wonder, I'd love to extend the invitation to see how might we bring this forward as a part of the summit that's coming up, because we would love to kind of feature this work and invite people into that imaginal space and to understand, why it's important to have some of these things kind of implemented into our systemic structure, so people understand that right now you can grant personhood to corporations, but you can't grant personhood to natural systems. And so they can't stand up in a court of law and say, like, you are raping me, like you are literally like extracting and taking and not being considerate that I am a living body too. And so the rights of nature movement grants those rights and makes that visible and creates like a voice for the human voiceless, but the personhood that is so vital. And it would be amazing. I'm so excited to learn about all the things you've written and see how we can weave them in and also connect that with the work of the amazing creators in the studio and others who are going to be coming forward.
Yes, just yes. Yes. Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
Roxy, we'll leave that to you and Claire to connect, right? And we'll figure out.
I'll let you be our bridge, Mark. Mark
Yeah.
is going to be helping bridge more, Claire, so
Yeah.
we can keep kind of the communication solid.
Yeah, and we'll find a way to weave into our sessions coming up.
Yay!
Roxy,
I'll hand it over to you. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, go forth and beam.
Thank you, Roxy. I'm so happy you could come.
Me too. I had an advisory meeting with one of my mentors and she had to go to the doctor. So hopefully she's okay, but that made it so that I was available. So there's so many incredible artists here from the studio and I'm so excited for their voices to be shared. And there's a few of you that Akiko and Heather, who I don't know, but hi, I look forward to knowing more about you. And thanks for caring about art and regeneration and the world. I look forward to connecting more.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So
Oh, what a wonderful introduction, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you want to manage our time together?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is take this opportunity to do a little backcasting. And Heather's got a little beam going there because when we met last week or whenever that was, a few weeks ago, when I mentioned backcasting, you actually lit up and you were like, I've never heard anybody speak to that. I was in Germany where we were working on backcasting. So it's fun that you're here to help us with this. What I'd like to do is I'm going to start a story. And then the rest of us will chime in to help fill out what the future looks like and how we will get there. All right. So once upon a time, in a moment that actually slipped out of time, I was in my early 20s. And it was in the late 70s. And I was working with people that had worked with Buckminster Fuller. And I was asked to create a poster based on an idea of Bucky Fuller about making the invisible visible. And so Bucky loved the electromagnetic spectrum. He felt that was the tool of the ages that we had attuned to so that we could expand our senses and our sensibilities. And out of that journey, I was gifted a story about the leprechaun kin. And the leprechaun kin were here. They had imparted to me a notion that, in fact, by being able to tune in to the electromagnetic spectrum, we could see that, in fact, there were electrons and there were protons. But we also discovered along the way of this journey that we were also conscious. And we were conscious enough to realize that we were part of this story, and we were evolving from being mere humans to becoming leprechauns, ELEPROCON. So electron, proton, and consciousness. And this notion also divulged that as we evolved, we had to elect between the pro and the con. We had very many decisions to be made. And I thought this story was mine to tell at the time. And what I learned was, in fact, I had been gifted a view into the future and needed to wait for the leprechaun kin to tell their story. We are here today, 40 years later, sitting with my leprechaun kin, who have so much to share, so much to beam, as part of the Backcasting Evolutionary Alliance mediums. You know, Bucky said, I seem to be a verb. Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. And the leprechaun kin, be the medium. So with that, I would like to invite Stephen to share with us his beam. And then you can pass it on.
Well, 40 years ago, I was 13. And probably that was the time when I was thinking about, I don't know, I'm going to survive this world. Trying to figure out, what do I do? I'm an artist. What does an artist do? And the best that the world could give me at the time was, well, there's commercial art. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But there was something else going on that was just leading me to think about a different way of being in the world. And it led to this concept of, well, my last name is Bao, and in that name, even though it's a Chinese name that means Babylonian Cantonese, it also means to build in German. And what I saw, that it was connected to a group of artists that started a school in Weimar, Germany, just when everything was falling apart. Everything was in intense crisis. They'd just come out of the Great War, and there was a pandemic happening. They were in the middle of financial collapse, and they had to figure out, well, how do we go on from here? We've lost everything. Well, you gather the artists, you gather the architects and the painters and the sculptors and the visionaries who have some idea of, I think we can rebuild the future. We can envision something and then bring it into reality. And so I was caught by that vision when I was studying graphic design as I guess just at the edge of my teens going into my 20s. And so when I first got a job as a designer, I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like, what's happening here is there's a shift in technology that's happening, because I was being taught how to do everything by hand, and then all of a sudden this digital revolution came along and transformed everything really quickly. And I realized I gotta figure out how this all works. And so I'm tapping into that idea of the medium is the message. Well, what is the medium? What is the message? that has been a question I've been wrestling with for a few decades. And so what I realized over time was that I was witnessing design evolving over time. From we were creating these physical artifacts, and then now a few decades later I'm realizing we're building social systems. we're re-envisioning and reinventing ourselves, and we are actually projecting intentions into the future and then making those intentions reality. But we're not trained to do that. we're trained to deal with these specialized fields of maybe typography or user experience design, or how to build a website or an application. But how do we build human beings? Where do we learn that? And so that's where I started thinking about, well, maybe we need a new kind of Bauhaus, like a builders collective, people who are building personal resilience, and then maybe social kind of agency or influence, and economic capacity, and political agency, taking their authority back from the people we outsourced that to. And what would that look like? And so it was about creating this new world of how we can explore how we imagine, design, and build the future together. Because that's what we're doing, but we don't know it. and we've had our imagination so boxed in that we can't see the sphere, the wide sphere around us that we're in. And just coming to this group, it was building this idea, and it was just, I don't know how to build this kind of community. But when I was invited to be part of the design science studio, I'm like, I don't think I got what it takes to be part of that group. But then I applied with what I'd been working on for a number of years. Well, let's see what happens. And then I discovered this group that Mark calls the Leprechaun Kin. To me, it was, wow, there is the Builders Collective right there. I don't have to do anything. It just appeared. Or, I've been imagining this into being this whole time. And I think a lot of us have been trying to imagine, what kind of world do we want? And it's through that imagination when we start realizing what's important and who we want to spend time with and what kind of things we want to work on. And I think that's how I find myself here. And so, I could go on. There's this idea of mythopoeia that drew me into this realm of myth making that Mark has been speaking about as well. So that's where I'm shifting my art to be thinking about, what do I add to design? Well, I used to be designing in service of other people's visions, the needs of corporations as profit centers. And I did that faithfully for a number of years. And then I started questioning, well, what am I doing? I mean, it's been a great learning experience, but ultimately there's something more that I want to do. And yeah, so now it's telling the story of how we become that collective, collaborating together and actually writing those stories of what we want to live into together. So with that, I'll pass it on to, do I pass it on to someone else, or what do you want to do, Mark?
Yeah, so you're welcome to. I just would like to mention, because we've brought up myth, and for me, it's about this evolving mythos. It's the collective mythic operating systems that we are conjuring together and living into. So with that, Stephen, and the thread that you've been weaving, who would you like to have share their next aspects of this evolving mythos?
Well, maybe Stephanie, because I mentioned unboxing our world, and Stephanie has a lot to say about that, which is probably a pretty good precursor to what might come next, is Stroopy digging deeper into that. But if that works.
Yeah. I'm just going to, I hear the heat. Hold on one second. The very funny thing about me saying I hear the heat is that I was writing with a friend, texting, and I said, there's some things that have been happening that feel like the magnetics are starting to work in our fields that we're making here. And she said, well, hurry up. And I thought that's so funny, because I hear the heat. There's a lot of heat out there of what's going on in the world, and what a perfect time to turn this ship around, as we've been doing in this interesting way inside of each of us. And so, there's so many places to tap into. And I just want to go back to the backcasting for a second. I mean, I could backcast my past really quickly, is that, I grew up into an artist, a painter, and a video and a film editor at the time. And, there was always a lot of creativity in my home, but my family members really, we all have our ways that we don't really learn in the same way as the rest of the way it's set up. And I got very lucky when I was younger, because of where I was and just all these things. I really fell into this world of painting with light in television. And it was wonderful. And I had a whole network that supported what I did. The computer was in the other room. People took care of all their things. And I really got to really do wonderful things, and that carried on. And so I had dreams about what I wanted to do, which was, win this or do this, and it's those all happened. And what I was missing was the heart. What about, because it was also for other things. And it was for a network that had some, had content in it that I didn't go along with. So I didn't really hold on to that. So I sort of left that and moved out to the West Coast, and thought I would restart and figure things out. And, I did go back in for a bit, came back out. And what happened was, I was trying to bring in, where's this voice? What does this voice want to say? And, go on and on. But I'm just going to come out here of 2000, it was around the time that I have so many stories to tell, and I want to keep it right back where we are. But I basically had to go in search of structure, because I couldn't find one that worked, and I couldn't find one working inside of myself. But what I did see was I related to things in this other way. So at some point, right after kids, I saw this music video that put together the Cosmos show as a song called We Are All Connected. And because I didn't study science and I didn't study math, I was an artist. I basically felt that. And it was so cool, because it showed me how we're all connected. And I got it. And Richard Feynman was talking about the light in the room and how it bounces around. And basically, when we go to the electromagnetic spectrum and stuff, I see that everywhere. So I was like, I could take photos of this. And I didn't and make a whole body of work of it. And I didn't realize. So I'm gonna just share 2 photos right now. I think. Just give me 1 second, because let's see. If I put it up before, I would have interrupted your speaking, Steve. Okay, waves of light. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I think her,
Stephanie drop off. She's got some
Yeah.
older technology, I think.
yeah, so she'll pop back in.
Pop back.
Yeah, Stroopy, you're drawing on the board there. Can you jump in here for a moment?
Yeah, I'm coming
Yeah, I don't know if
here.
Stephanie's battery died or she came unplugged or what happened and how long she'll be out there for. Wait,
She's
is this
back.
her? No.
There she is.
There she is. Okay, you're back. Stephanie?
I can't show it this way on a computer, so I'm going to show it this way. Okay, I'm going to take you into this image because it's not working with that. I'm not sure if you could even see it because of all the glare and reflection,
Yeah,
but can you see?
there's a lot of reflection.
Okay, so you can't see it. Sorry about that. Okay,
Tell
we'll
us-
go
tell
on
us-
to the next person. Thank you. Waves of light and electromagnetics is how I see, and I have fathoms of information and documentation on different species and ways and all that kind of stuff. And it weaves back to the backcasting for me, because it weaves back to the fact that we don't know, there's so much we haven't learned, and there's so much that didn't go through, and we are here to bring it through. And so in the backcasting, I happened to be on the phone with Stroopy in that first backcasting because I couldn't get on the technology, and I had him write it in for me. And I believe it said, we have to get into structure, right? And, it was like many things, but I'll go back to structure, because all these waves come together and we consider them and think they're solid, and they're not. They're a whole different structure. So I'm just going to weave into Stroopy with structure, because that's where we're at now. And Stroopy understands and sees the structure that nature builds with, which is all this, fathoms of, evidence that I have that shows that the structure that he's weaving with and understands with is what Bucky was trying to show us. It was also what Nikola Tesla was trying to show us. Bucky was trying to show us what Nikola was showing us. So we're weaving all this back in, and it's coming in through here, but we have to understand structure first, and then the waves and the patterns will flow through. So thank you. Take it away, Stroopy.
Okay. Wow, so many stories already, so much back and forth casting. And I'm just happy to be here with you all. And yeah, I think, rather than speaking all that much, I'd perhaps like to show you something, right? Because we all have been taught in one way or another that the reality that we live in is what we call three-dimensional. It's a supposedly made up of space, static space, and cubic shapes and linear time. But the thing is, that's not really the case. You see, the shape that we think of as a cube, the thing that constitutes our idea of space and 3D reality is built upon that, is well, a transform, a dance form. Really, it's something that moves and shapes and takes all kinds of funny, weird positions, but it doesn't really do well cube on its own, right? So it only works as long as we believe in static space, but that is something you will never find anywhere in the universe. And what it really kind of reflects back to us is really more this kind of hex and a few more other related things. And the thing I took out of it when it still had a shape was this. And this is what Bucky was all about, right? Bucky Fuller has used all his life as a playground to discover the structures and patterns of space-time and figure out the way of the spheres, as I come to call it, which is basically, you know, below the superficial ideas of geometry that we've been made believe, there is a reality that is embodied and bodiless, bodying, you know, it's a constant, continuous shapeshift happening, and all of it is dynamic very much. It's not at all, not at all static, you know. It's constantly changing, and that is the one thing that remains the same. And we can learn incredibly many things about these behaviors and structures if only we create them in our vicinity so that they may teach us. And with all of that being said, here is the beam. This is what beaming looks like in practice, because this is basically a star. It's essentially a electromagnetic wave, in this case made of paper, straws, and string. And it is a wave. It is possible to shapeshift and grow and shrink again, expand and dance. And this is what we have come to call the mother of all spheres. And if this mother gives birth like this to that little seedling inside of it, so that it may be carried away on the winds of change, or whatever winds we have lying around, you know, it may take off and take hold in some other's mind and grow another tree. But what we are left with here is the membrane of that mother, which it turns out is actually really a dancer. And she's doing the dance of the Tao. She's transforming through a whole range of shapes and forms that we can really do wrap our minds around, as our minds are themselves these structures made up of, well, our emotions, our insides and outsides, and everything around. And there is much that we can speak about here. It is incredibly deep knowledge. It is also very, very simple, because as we detach ourselves from the language that we've been taught to describe these things in a conceptual sense, we can grow back to our felt sense and have a language that reflects our embodied experience. So rather than, you know, all these abstract shapes, what we're playing with is many eyes, and all of those eyes have something to show us, to have us look through them and experience. And yes, if you're asking me what 2030, I think, is the date that everyone has in their mind, what that looks like, I think we will have witnessed the greatest kind of paradigm shift in the history of, at least the history of our kind, the humanimal grace, returning to our membership earth. And as we remember our place in this whole web of life, we actually regain our creative sense, our creative self. We reintegrate into the greater spheres of life, coming back to the round of being, the great round, the ground of being. And as we do so, we activate or reactivate, reanimate our own capacity of spherical thinking. Because we're not thinking in lines and boxes and all these imaginative things, but we're thinking with all our being, integral with universe, the whole being inside and outside. And with that, I would like to pass it on to really whoever feels drawn to say something, because there is so many people in here and I'd love to sphere more of you.
Heather's inspired. You're on mute.
Thank you. I loved watching the all the shapes collapse into each other. That was amazing. I wanted to share how the idea that Mark started with brought up all sorts of associations for me. And it brought me back to where I started with backcasting, which was, I was similar to Stephen. I was in a corporate job, and I was doing some research, and I came upon this group called the Space Collective. And I was just so inspired by what they were working on. They were working on some concept called the polytopia. And through that, I discovered backcasting, and I thought I would bring some of that into my work at this company. And I had this very idealistic vision that I could bring together all of these evil corporations, and we would do this exercise of backcasting, and they would realize the error of their ways. And they would, see these 5 visions of the future and be able to choose the one that was the most beautiful. But we went through the whole exercise, and there were, I guess, 5 different worlds that we created. And the one that was in my opinion, the most resonant vision was called Pachamama, where the society considers what the effects of their technology bring upon the generations to follow. So they would think 7 generations, to the future, what would this technology do? And we sort of used speculative design to create this whole world in examples of the different worlds. And unfortunately, Monsanto and no, sorry, it wasn't Monsanto, it was Bayer. They bought Monsanto, Cargill, a couple other corporations. Yeah, basically they took the backcasting and they chose the most evil scenario. So from that learning, I started a group that did backcasting for in Europe for policymakers, for any group that sort of wanted to create a better vision of the future. And I was really enjoying what I was doing. I did some work for the European Commission and some other governments. And when I came back to the US, I thought I could bring this back here, and it wasn't a thing. That's why I was so shocked when Mark brought it up the other day. And yes, I still believe that there is potential for backcasting to do, help people envision the best way of the future. So yes, I'm excited to possibly participate in that. And I just have a lot of associations that come up around everything that you have said so far about the electromagnetic spectrum, and all these things. So I'll paste them in the chat if you're interested. And let's see, I will pass it on to Luke.
It might be best to get.
Hello.
It might be best to let people step in because
Yeah.
he might not be in that ready to speak mode. Just who would like to speak is possibly maybe.
Sure.
Yeah. And Jeet, I don't know if you want to share, but it is very late for you on the other side of the planet. And I would like to mention, because the conversation came up about the word Bau, which led to Baum in German, of course, is tree. And that actually is probably the root of the word beam, because when you built a ship, you used the logs, the trees, and the widest part of a ship is called the beam. And they measured the longest tree component to make the beam. And when you have a ship, the wider the beam, the more stable the ship is. So the more of us that are within the beam, potentially the more stable our ship is. And the aspect of the Earth being a sphere has a beam going through it, like Stroopy showed us. And I have a feeling that if you took and you beamed from me straight across to the other side of the planet, we'd be on Jeet's doorstep. So with that, you can help us do a little ray finding there, Jeet.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody for having me. So yeah, I don't know where to start, but well, I come from a very different background. Like when I was passing out from college, I was really clueless of what I'm supposed to do. Like, what's my role in this society? And that time in our country, it was all about engineering. Like in my age group, almost all my friends are like some or the other engineers, but we had no clue what to do with that, like, so, but anyways, I did my engineering and mechanical, and I still had no clue of how exactly I'm going to use this. So I did work for a couple of corporates for a few years, but I still wasn't like able to figure out where exactly is my place. So I kind of quit all of that and started to work on my passion, which was fashion and art and culture. So I tried to get a degree in fashion technology because I had to use my engineering degree somehow. And I did not have an artistic background or a creative background. So, to get admission into design was difficult for me. So the best thing that came up was fashion technology. And there I learned about apparel manufacturing and, all the mass manufacturing processes, everything about quality and, basically about mass manufacturing. But also they taught us about sustainability. That was the first time I heard that word. And it was a very brief introduction with that word. And then we kind of graduated and had to go for our, career paths and go work in corporates again, because that's the way to do it, right? So, so I started working with one of the corporates in our country, and what I saw there was a total exploitation of everything, like from humans to materials to environment, and I couldn't like relate myself working there, and I was like, this is not what I want to do, So I had to quit that job, and I started freelance designing for to sustain my living. First off, I just picked up any job that came into hand, like from graphic design to printmaking, just about anything that could come. And because I did not have any creative background, so I had to teach myself all of these things. So, anyways, but while I was freelancing, I also had a lot of time in hand to like upskill myself and learn new skills. So that's when I started learning about tie-dyeing. I came across this technique of coloring and making patterns on fabric, and I discovered that it is such an ancient technique that was used by so many cultures and so many people around the globe to make affordable clothing or fabrics for everybody. So that's how I came across this particular technique of tie dyeing, and it was difficult, and it's still difficult to manage expenses and finances and everything. So I was like, I can't do this alone, like this is not happening in this way. I need support, and I want to be of support to people as well. So I really tried my best to travel around the country, meet different artisans in different parts of the country, and learn what they are making and how they are making it through their indigenous techniques, and trying to learn from them and trying to share some of my modern knowledge that I have and what could help them in their craft. And that's when I felt this completeness, that this whole power of collaboration, that like how we can help each other and make a difference, make a bigger story out of it all, rather than me creating my own products and him creating or her creating their own products. If we come together and make something together, it becomes way more meaningful, and it adds a whole story and a whole feeling to that product than just a materialistic thing. So yeah, that's how it started. And that's when pandemic hit, and everything got down again, and I was like really looking for collaboration somewhere. And that's when I came across the Vision Train, which is like a collaboration of artists all around the globe. And it's headed by this amazing visionary artist Amanda Sage, who's been a great mentor to us. And there I learned a lot, about working together and learning from these new artists all over the globe. And from there, I got introduced to the DSS. The first Regenera was, somehow it clashed with the Vision Train's anniversary. And that's how, I came across Mark and Roxy and Nicholas and even Stephen and all these amazing people who had such great ideas. And although at first it sounded like very technical and, like very different words that I had never heard before. And, for all of us who were on the train, we were like, oh my God, these people are so cool. They have such great words to, express themselves. And we as artists and creators, we are always like a little short of words. And it's difficult for us to, express ourselves in words most of the times, but then again, the opportunity came to be a part of DSS, and I was just like, I just want to be a part of this, and be a part of this bigger group. And how I see it as that all these beautiful communities are somehow interlinked together, and together, we make a stronger community in our own ways, in our own small ways. We are trying to make this change with a very similar vision and a goal, which is like attached to making everything work for everyone. So that's what really inspired me. Yeah, that's why.
Thank you, Jeet. That's the path we wander is quite something, isn't it? And you never know what's going to be around the corner. I'd like to open it up now to questions or more. Maybe a Kiko, I don't know if you want to share, or Claire, and Luke, if you're out there, of course. So let's just open it up and see what happens.
Akiko, do you feel like sharing or asking anything?
I've been enjoying listening, and since I haven't been living, I haven't been living in that world, like everybody was sharing, and I haven't discovered my artist part. So that's why I am with Claire. Even though I know I am creative in my own way, I don't really have a special name or, you know, and but the vision or future I really share with you all. And at the moment, I'm in a very good place, and I'm enjoying being each and every day, and feeling really content every day. So I really appreciate this moment, and I really appreciate meeting you all and getting all the fun stories, and my curiosity become bigger and bigger. Thank you.
Thank you, Akiko. You know, Claire, I would like to just really tap on you, because you know you are a host today, and you have so much, and you have so many different ways to see the world. And I like to refer that as to, we are evolving from being reactionaries to refractionaries, and you are a wonderful refractionary. So why don't you see what comes forth from that?
Gosh, this is so big. This is like so big. I can't see the edges of it. And I feel each of us inside the shape that Struzen has in front of him. And there's a kindness in that, a generosity in that. Something so vast that it can hold us all. And the thing I'm struck by, yes, Stephanie, the thing I'm struck by is this massive and extraordinary and creative intelligence that beams through us and hopes that we will talk and connect and exchange so that we can keep creating new shapes. I found, in terms of backcasting, that when I was quite young, there was severe disappointment in the lack of imagination I was invited to play in with others. And I was lonely. I found that companionship in the forest, and I found that companionship on the edge of the water and the sea and the stones of the beaches in England, and the wind and the trees and the way it all talked. And for me, the game was really about feeling my listening and experiencing my arising expressive imagination, finding places to come out and become visible or audible, touchable. The thing I seek is heart connection through an intelligent kind of warmth that has massive amounts of color and shape and texture, that seeks to know itself through other, knowing that other in fact is itself. There's a beautiful play in that. I think there is a great sense of humor in the universe around paradox. I came across one of the day-long events of, I think, DSS. I really don't know how. But I remember having this absolute curiosity. It's like, I think I know these people. I think I know this space, right? It was that kind of visceral recognition of something familiar that was brand new. And I feel heartened today. I'm having the same thoughts. I'm watching so many different parts of me have so much that they want to share. And it's impossible to do that in a straight line. It has to be done, I think, by osmosis and by visceral connection. And feeling that recognition and articulating it. And I understand, Jeet, that perhaps visual artists, I think I have met that in other people who are visual artists, that to find words, to word things seems perhaps even pointless because it's already expressed in the image. Why do it again? Why make it harder? In a way, I feel like I'm lucky that I dropped into this earth with these other facets, so that there is this multidimensionality ability to contribute and to articulate things within the moment, without attachment, apart from to truth of the moment. I do get attached to that. I think it's important. And that's really just about inclusivity, to be honest, not about hierarchy. I was born a Libran, and I suspect that's that has its own service, because it's very much about justice and inclusivity. So that's where you'll see me get passionate, even angry, is when that's not occurring and when it's deliberately pushed away. Because then we're missing out. It's not kind, but beyond the not kind, we're missing out on this diversity of intelligence and ways of knowing and being that give us the opportunity to evolve into expanded states of consciousness and awareness from which we can build. And we do that together. Our intelligence, our creativity, our future lies within the networking. And again, look at that in Strösen's, that shape. We don't have to understand it. We just have to listen to it. We can begin to understand it as we build it. So yes, it's yes and. So that's what comes forward right now. And I want to say thank you to the forests and the trees and the stones and the insects who teach us, who feed us, and who teach us how to share and connect and network and appreciate and just get on with it, you know. So thank you. Mark.
Oh, I was gonna remain silent there for a moment. There's so much juicy stuff going on here that it just feels wonderful to sit with it.
Yes,
Yeah.
letting it be whole.
Yeah. I know we're coming to our time, and everybody's got their day ahead of them or their night to get some sleep, Jeet. If there's any closing thoughts or remarks that anybody would like to make, let's take a moment for that before we say goodbye and beam out.
Well, Stephanie is raising her hand.
I'll be very fast. Which is that what I know in my heart is that when we follow the patterns as nature has been following them, we have all the solutions we need here and now. Now, we don't have to look to the future because that future will never arrive. We have to be here now, and we have everything we need. And the rest of nature, the rest of us, the rest of it, because we're nature, is already doing it. So we just turn and follow and leave the boxes behind and just follow the patterns that we're building and the geometries of life that we're growing. And we're creating the new playgrounds of life for all. We're all here together. So thank you. And go ahead. There you go.
Well, if I may attach myself onto that last thought, I don't actually know the time. I'm not living in time anymore. I'm living in time space and, you know, playing with space time. It's really the same thing going one way or the other. But since you spoke so much of the heart, Claire, this is something I really would like to bring in again, kind of weaving together this idea of beaming and all of that, because we've been taught to believe or to perceive the world on a basis of pressure. It's always compression. And even what the stars do when they cast their light into universe, we perceive that as something that is radiating out because it's such a high pressure within. But really what is happening is there is a vast openness without that is drawing out this light from every star, from you and I, and the trees and the bees and all of them together. So what we all are embracing with our common gravity, that is the sphere of life. And at the heart of everybody, everybody, there is a heart, a center of gravity specific to this system, to this organism, just as this one has its center of gravity here. And that is the heart. That is, in this case, even the heart of the matter, because matter is mother. It's the same word. It is that we don't need to repatriate to any kind of lens of our forefathers or, follow that call to be anything less but whole, because what we are is sphere, and where we are is sphere. And as we are sphere, we may remember to just rematriate. Remember the mother, the matter between, among, within, without, and with us. So that is the kind of world we are casting into the now, into our minds here and now, so that the future, whatever came around, may just be what wants to be. And we can take a step back, and rather than forcing everything and pushing when we really only have muscles that pull, we may let be. We let it all be as it wants to be, including us. And that opens the gates to synergy. And we will be free from energy, any dependency on energy, when we regain our sense of synergy.
Stroopy, the sense of integrity. My friends, anybody else like to share on the way out? Heather?
I just wanted to thank you for inviting me. I have a lot of gratitude for meeting you all. And I wanted to share a link to something that I find a lot like home. It's the sound of the sun. It's just very calming.
Thank you for sharing.
I've just put back in the chat the invitation for those who aren't in the dynamic emergence community, so Mighty Network community. It would be lovely to have you there. That's all. And I want to thank you, Mark, for being inspired to connect us all.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah.
And being.
Stephen?
Oh, just if someone could save the chat for me. I think I missed some of the links that were shared right at the end, because for some reason, my computer just wanted to kick me out and restart.
We'll do. We'll have the recording. We'll play with recording and get the.
Yeah, and the chat. Yeah, it'll all be saved, and I'll definitely post it in Dynamic Emergence, the GRC Arts, but also Mark, wherever you want to post it, if there's a different place for everyone.
Thank you so much. And thank you for
Thanks,
hosting this.
everybody.
It's great.
Yeah. All right. We'll say goodbye from here. And again, those that aren't Heather and Akiko and Claire, keep an eye out. I put in the link to the event for the Design Science Studio. And it sounds like there's going to be some invitations for Claire to participate in a very specific way. We'll figure out what that might be. And then we welcome everybody. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.